evening, Africans. Good evening, women and men and the youth. Young, old, full of wisdom. Good evening, African. I just want, every time I see any pictures from Uganda, any videos from Uganda that are of torture, barbaric actions, inhumane treatment, I am just overwhelmed. I am angry. I am frustrated. I am completely motionless. I am lost for words. But I am also inspired. I'm inspired to write. I'm inspired to put my feelings from head to paper. I'm inspired to tell you exactly how I feel at this moment, in this moment. I am being present. Therefore, my fellow Ugandans, my fellow Africans, my fellow human beings of the world, please listen, be present, and understand the plight of the Ugandans. No, we do not want for you to feel sorry for the Ugandans, but we want action. We want
These are some of the Ugandan citizens who, in November last year, were shot on the streets of Kampala. Not by terrorists or criminals, but by the security forces of their own government. The killings took place in the run-up to Uganda's elections as the police and the army scrambled to suppress violent protests. Protests sparked by the arrest of Bobi Wine, the young opposition leader who is challenging President Museveni's 35-year rule. By the government's own count, more than 50 people were killed on November 18th and 19th.
We are being shot at. We are being shot at in the building.
But in the days that followed, Museveni's government, and in particular his security minister, General Eli Tumwine, tried to justify the killings. First, Tumwine defended the use of live fire.
Police has a right to shoot you and kill you if you reach a certain level of violence.
Then he asked a question.
We have yet to establish those who were shot, actually who shot them, and under what circumstances. That's a matter of investigation. Because as I have said,
6 months after that statement was made, no public inquiry into the killings has been held, and no investigation has been published by the Ugandan government. In the meantime, BBC Africa Eye has conducted its own investigation into the killings of November 18th and 19th. We've now analyzed some 400 videos shot over those 2 days and spoken with more than 30 eyewitnesses to these events. Using this evidence, we can bring you a more complete story about some of the people who were killed in Kampala. And we can answer, at least in part, the question posed by General Tumwine. Who shot them and under what circumstances? November 2020. With the general election approaching, President Yoweri Museveni is facing the most serious political challenge of his 35 years in power.
This is not politics as usual. This is a revolution. You know that every time we united, we have won.
Bobi Wine, who was raised in the city slums and went on to become a music superstar and then an MP, is channeling the hopes of many young Ugandans who say they've grown tired of poverty, of corruption, and of an old guard who have been in power for decades. The median age here is just 16. When Museveni took office in 1986, 3/4 of Ugandans hadn't even been born. Just before noon on November 18th, Bobi Wine is arrested in Luuka, ostensibly for holding election rallies that breach Uganda's COVID-19 rules on mass gatherings. The arrest, his supporters say, is politically motivated. Within the hour, young men are gathering on the streets of Kampala. Roadblocks are set alight. Almost immediately, the police and the army are deployed in force. Tear gas is fired. By 2 o'clock, people have been shot. And one of them is this woman in the red skirt. Her death marks the start of a killing spree on Kampala Road. Her name was Kamuyat Nangobi. She was 28 years old and a mother to 4 children. Kamuyat worked here on Kampala Road, cooking and delivering food to businesses in the neighborhood. Despite the chaos on November 18th, she kept working. Just before 2 p.m., Kamuyat delivered food to this shop, where an eyewitness told us she stayed inside for a moment, watching the street. But she was carrying a plate of food for another customer, her grandfather, Muslimu Musimami, who was waiting for her in this building. Against the warnings of the shop's security guard, Kamuyat talked her way out and crossed the street. This is Kamuyat. This video captured the final moments of her life. Hearing gunfire, she runs for cover. Seconds after this clip ends, a bullet hit her in the back of the head. Kamuyat fell here. On the second floor of this building, Muslimu had the shots. He reached the balcony in time to see his granddaughter's body being carried into the road. He ran down, but the street doors were locked. All he could do was take this photo. We now know who Kamuyat was and something about the circumstances in which she died. But General Tumwine's central question remains: who shot her? The video we've already seen, the one that captures the final seconds of Kamuyat's life, was filmed from here. If we look more closely, we see a truck coming at speed down Kampala Road. This video, taken at exactly the same moment from the other side of the street, shows us more. It was a police truck marked with the identification number 17. This flash of red is Kamuyat's skirt. As police truck 17 drives past, we hear a gunshot. And Kamuyat falls to the ground. Although we can't see her face in this video, we know for certain this is Kamuyat because seconds later, another video gives us a clear view of her dead body. She is lying outside this computer store, in the same place where she fell. The plates she was taking to her grandfather are smashed on the ground in front of her. Multiple eyewitnesses confirmed that a police truck drove down Kampala Road, firing live ammunition indiscriminately into the crowd. The visual evidence, as well as their testimony, indicates that someone seated on the left side of that truck killed Kamuyat. The videos we've seen so far don't reveal the faces of the men seated on that side, but they are not the only videos filmed that day. At around 2 p.m., immediately before Kamuyat was shot, and just 300 meters away, a Ugandan television crew captured these images of the same police patrol, Truck 17, heading straight for Kampala Road. The license plate is UP 5564. Let's look at that again. If we pause the video on this frame and sharpen the image, we can see the faces of 4 men, all carrying rifles, seated on the left-hand side of Truck 17. All the evidence indicates that minutes, possibly just seconds, after this footage was recorded, one of these 4 men killed Kamuyat Nangobi. And Kamuyat was not the only person killed on Kampala Road. Just 75 meters from where Kamuyat fell, a bullet passed through the door of the Little B restaurant, maiming the cashier, Dio, as well as this young woman who asked not to be named in our report. Both were shot in the feet. 60 meters further along, John Amera, a 31-year-old father of 2, was killed by a bullet to the chest. Seconds later, Abbas Kalule, a local man who was closing the shop where he worked, was hit in the upper leg. He was taken to hospital but died 4 days later. At the end of the road, eyewitnesses told us the truck turned northeast, but the killing was not over. John Chitobe, a 72-year-old retired accountant, had gone into town to change money. He was standing in this doorway as the truck passed. John was shot in the neck and died at the scene. Another man was also shot on these steps, the only one of these victims we cannot yet identify. These images, which have never been shown before, were filmed seconds after he was shot in the pelvis. One eyewitness told us he survived. Another said the man died on the way to hospital. Police truck 17 drove on. 30 minutes later, carrying what looks like the same crew, it was still patrolling. In the space of a minute or so, 7 people were shot along this road. At least 4, perhaps 5 of them died. There is no evidence to suggest that any of these people were rioting. The 4 men seated on the left-hand side of police truck 17 should be easily identifiable by the Ugandan authorities, who claim to be investigating these shootings. But almost 6 months after Kamuyat and at least 3 other people were killed, no one has been charged with their deaths. Kampala Road was not the only place where the crackdown ended in bloodshed. 7 kilometers away from where Kamuyat lay dead, and at around the same time, young men were burning tires and throwing stones along Ginger Road. Crowds were gathering, scared to venture out, but eager to see what was going on. From the balcony of an apartment, someone used a mobile phone to film one of these groups. They are looking east, their attention drawn by a fast-approaching convoy. As it sweeps past, shots are fired and 2 women fall to the ground. The cars don't stop. This photo, taken moments later, shows us the faces of the women who were shot. They are sisters, Shakira, the mother of a newborn baby, and Shamim, who was pregnant with triplets. This is Shakira. At the time of the shooting, her baby was just 2 weeks old.
Olunaku olwo nali ndi mu kutambula nva ku dduuka nze nali nva kugula bintu natuuka awo okuweta okujeni ewange emmotoka we zaatuuka awo zaali mmotoka 3 ne zitukuba amasasi zaatukuba abawala 2 naye kati sawa ebiwundu kungulu byakala naye munda tebinnakala nkuba mpulira pain nyingi.
Her sister Shamim also survived.
Ne batutwala e Mulago mu ddwaliro eddene Mulago. Naddamu kutegeera ssaawa zaali 6 ez'ekiro nga bamaze okunongoosa. Nalimu n'olubuto lw'abaana 3. Kati bwe baamala okunongoosa ne wayitawo olunaku lumu abaana ne bavaamu. Buli we ndujjukira mpulira bubi kuba nakosebwa. Abaana bange baavaamu ate nali mbaagala.
At least 15 people saw the drive-by shooting that killed Shamim's unborn children. We've now spoken to 3 of these eyewitnesses, and all of them told us the same thing. The sisters were shot by Ugandan security forces riding in a government convoy. BBC Africa Eye has now uncovered new evidence to support that claim. This video, which began live streaming on Facebook at 2:23, was filmed from the back of a motorbike riding out of Kampala along Jinja Road. It begins here, just 90 meters from where the sisters were standing and just half an hour before the first report of the shooting. A kilometer to the east, the bike meets a convoy of cars blocking the road. We see a man in military uniform carrying a rifle, as well as 2 vehicles that the person filming immediately identifies as government motor cars. The car on the right, a Toyota Land Cruiser, looks like the same make and model as the 3rd vehicle in the convoy. The car on the left, a Land Cruiser Prado, is identical to the 2nd vehicle seen in the drive-by shooting. All the evidence indicates that someone riding in this Land Cruiser shot Shamim and Shakira. We know this because if we replay the video, we hear the gunshot just as this vehicle passes the crowd. Immediately, Shamim and Shakira fall to the ground. We cannot see the face of the man who shot them, but we can see that the windows on that side of the car are down. The Ugandan government has not denied that its forces shot these women. It has even used the video as part of a press briefing in which the president pledged to compensate any innocent victims.
But you lost your life. The government, after due process, will compensate for the loss of life. The government will also compensate those who lost their properties, if it can be verified.
So, can the full facts about this drive-by shooting be verified? 500 meters from this corner, the convoy would have passed a bank of security cameras watching the Jinja Road, part of a government-operated surveillance network that includes 83 high-tech monitoring centers and covers much of Kampala. These cameras were used to identify some of the protesters who turned violent on November 18th and 19th, including this man who was jailed for attacking a policewoman with a hammer. But if the government can identify the vehicles involved in this shooting or name the men who were riding in them, it has not made that information public. More than 6 months after this incident, Shamim and Shakira have received nothing. No apology from the government, no compensation for their injuries, no recognition of their loss. The next day, November 19th, the rioting continued, and so did the crackdown. "15-year-old Amos Segawa was with his mother, Hajara, at her shop on Kafumbe Mukasa Road. Alarmed by the chaos, Hajara decided to close the shop and head home via the taxi park on Mengo Hill Road. Before she could get there, she says, a military truck came down Mengo Hill firing live ammunition. Amos was shot in the mouth. The footage recorded as he lay in this doorway is too distressing to show in full. We see the boy vomiting blood onto the pavement. This man, perhaps a shopkeeper or just a passerby, is holding the child, covering his eyes, reassuring him as he dies. Amos's mother is inconsolable. A television crew from Uganda's Spark TV was present at the scene, and it was one of their journalists, Jocelyn Nakiwule, who had the boy lifted onto a motorbike and rushed to hospital. Amos was pronounced dead on arrival. The police, in a letter requesting a post-mortem, stated that Amos had been killed by a stray bullet. The Ugandan media also used that phrase. It was even picked up by President Museveni, who pointed out that a bullet can only be described as stray if it was fired at a legitimate target in the first place.
The police should also audit the phenomenon of shooting people by stray bullets. Stray bullets only come into play when you are firing directly at the attackers, but some bullets miss the attackers and hit the bystanders.
There is nothing to suggest that the bullet that killed Amos Segawa was aimed at any legitimate target. All the evidence, starting with the testimony of the boy's mother, indicates that a UPDF soldier was firing indiscriminately from the back of a truck racing down Mengo Hill.
Kati tuba tutambula nze maaso nasooka laba kamotoka k'amagye nga kava Mengo kakirira kadda ku saa Queen awo olabawo mu ka junction naye nga batunuza mbantu bati kumbe bakuba naye nga ke kamukuba amagye ge gakuba omwana wange ne kagenda akamotoka ako kali kakuba bukubi bullet.
BBC Africa Eye has now spoken with 2 other eyewitnesses to the killing of Amos, and both corroborate Hajara's account.
The protesters were peaceful. They didn't have guns. They had sticks and placards. The patrol truck came. It was like the 7th coming from Mengo. First it went to Mengo while shooting, and then it came back still shooting at people. I knew they were soldiers. From the numbers on the truck, they were UPDF. They were dressed in green camouflage.
They came from Mengo Hill. The car from Mengo Hill had military men on it. When it reached here, it stopped for a bit while one of the men shot at the people. One of the bullets hit the boy. I saw the car and one of the men shooting was standing while the rest were seated.
None of these witnesses feel safe enough to testify in public. Only the boy's mother will say on camera that the Ugandan military killed her son.
Wange sina kyenyinza bakola naye gavumenti eyogere n'abasirikale oba eba training engeri ki gye balina okuyisaamu abantu ng'owange omwana gwe batta atalina musango kati nze ndi wano mbonaabona. Amos yatya n'afuna stress ku maaso.
On April 12th, 5 months after Amos was killed, Hajara walked to Uganda's parliament to demand that someone be held responsible for the death of her boy. She was accompanied by Amos's 12-year-old sister, Jovia. The speaker, Rebecca Kadaga, promised to support Hajara's case. But to date, no soldier has been charged or arrested and no compensation has been paid. Hajara is now taking legal action. She wants the court to declare that the shooting of her son by soldiers was arbitrary, illegal, unlawful, and violated his fundamental human right to life as guaranteed by the Constitution of Uganda. She is not the only victim of November's violence seeking justice. When Kamuyat's grandfather took this photo, he did so in the hope that the image might serve as evidence in a criminal prosecution. In their village in eastern Uganda, Kamuyat's mother, Zikaje, and her sister, Mwasit, made no demand for justice. Left to raise the 4 children orphaned by the killing of Kamuyat, they spoke only of their grief. We put these allegations to the Ugandan government. They told us security forces were deployed to quell violent and disruptive riots. They acknowledged that 4 people died on Kampala Road. Their own investigations concluded that the victims were killed by stray bullets. They said UP5564 is a police patrol car, but had no information linking it to indiscriminate shooting. They claimed to have no record of 2 women shot on Ginger Road and said the incident had not been reported to the police. They confirmed that Amos Segawa was killed on November 19th, but again attributed his death to a stray bullet. They told us innocent victims will be compensated, but that verification takes time. Finally, they said these deaths have been investigated and that a report has been tabled in Parliament. We began this investigation with a question.
We have yet to establish those who were shot, actually who shot them, and under what circumstances.
Our attempt to answer it has been obstructed by fear. Journalists are afraid to investigate. Eyewitnesses are afraid to testify. Even some of the survivors and the relatives of those killed say they are reluctant to speak out, afraid that any criticism of Museveni's government might lead to arrest or torture. Despite these obstacles, BBC Africa Eye has gradually pieced together the evidence we've shown you in this film, and in it, there's a pattern. Security forces firing live ammunition without restraint or discrimination. Vehicles that do not stop. A total lack of accountability, even when children have been killed. General Tumwine, who asked that question in the first place, has always implied that the violence was necessary. Just a week after these killings, he praised Uganda's police and army for their response.
The armed forces, because all security forces have one responsibility: protect the sovereignty of the country, protect the lives and property of the people. So I really want to congratulate our security forces for what they have done. Restoring peace and order within 2 days was not an easy thing for a premeditated, planned to burn Kampala and other places, to destroy property, to cause mayhem.
But according to the evidence we've gathered, Kamuyat and the other people shot by police truck 17 on Kampala Road were not destroying property. The sisters Shamim and Shakira were not armed or dangerous. The boy Amos had not reached a certain level of violence. These people were mothers and fathers, workers and pensioners, locals and passers-by, children and unborn babies, shot and killed